Esports in 2024 is a curious case indeed. As big investors are stepping out, Saudi Arabia has been stepping in, pouring billions into this thriving yet very fragmented industry. But is Saudi Arabia genuinely boosting esports, or is it a strategic play at the cost of the industry's independence? With concerns about an esports monopoly, I will unpack Saudi Arabia's potential impact on the industry. What's in store for esports? Global recognition or commercial exploitation? $2.3 billion. That's the massive size of my bank account, but of the esports market today. With 540 million global viewers, esports is huge in entertainment, rivaling traditional sports. Viewership alone will grow and skyrocket over the upcoming years, with peak events drawing millions of viewers. Top pro gamers are raking in millions and have become household names backed by serious money, from VC to state funds. But it's not all smooth sailing. What did you think? Despite the growth, key investors are bailing left and right. The money they expected in return was just not rolling in. They were making unrealistic comparisons to traditional sports, betting on massive returns from packed stadiums and merchandise.
Is build a league that is like the NFL, only global.
But comparing the Overwatch League to the NFL, well, in hindsight, that was a stretch, especially when it came to operational costs.
But when you look at the way we structured the league, the operating costs should be a lot lower than what you'd see in other traditional sports.
But their financial strain grew and caused massive downfalls of major leagues like the Overwatch League, CLG, and FaZe Clan. Even 100 Thieves, the second most valuable esports team in the world, had to let go 20% of its workforce.
I think a lot of people who bought into teams, not the esports themselves, had no idea how bad a business it was. No idea.
Sure.
In aggregate, it's a good business. Is it growing? Yes. But domestically here in the United States, it's an awful business.
So with little ROI, sponsors like BMW and HP didn't stick around either and put their sponsorships elsewhere. But what are BMW and HP compared to the heavyweight champion of wealth? Saudi Arabia, a country that went from this to this, thanks to its large oil reserves. Home to the world's largest airport, the largest desert, the tallest fountain, Saudi Arabia is now pouring resources into esports, aiming to become, of course, the largest gaming hub in the world. A strategic move that aligns with Vision 2030, a government plan to diversify the economy and reduce its dependence on oil. Because when the oil price dropped in 2014, it became very clear that oil dependency is a risky business. And the person in charge? Mohammed bin Salman, known as MBS, or Mr. Everything, as he oversees virtually everything. Under his rule, there have already been some modern reforms. Women are now allowed to drive.
All I can think about, I can still do my own stuff.
Women may travel abroad alone, and cinemas reopened after 35 years.
It's a big moment for the kingdom, and they're banking on Marvel for the first opening.
Fun fact, MBS is also a massive gamer.
What do you do to blow off steam? When you want to relax, like what do you have fun doing?
Video games.
Oh, what's that? Video games.
Video games.
You're a big gamer.
Since I'm a kid, I love it.
For MBS, esports is one of the most important industries on the planet, with an expected 25% profit from its investments.
It's like beating Hollywood today. So one of the streamers on eSport, he have more than 2 billion views, more than the biggest Hollywood movie.
In fact, the MENA gaming market is booming, with 6 to a projected $10 billion by 2029. Saudi Arabia's gaming market alone stands at $1 billion, with a projected $3 billion by 2030. And with 23 million gamers, it's the largest market by games revenue in that region. Another fun fact, 70% of Saudis are under 35 years old. That's the perfect audience for esports events, such as the Gamers 8 Festival, organized by the Saudi Esports Federation. Last year, it had a prize pool of $45 million. The largest one in esports history and surpassing the previous one. The SEF is also supporting female gamers with initiatives like the all-women CSGO tournament and Gamers Without Borders. The money invested into esports comes from Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth fund, the PIF. It's the 6th largest of its kind and financial powerhouse behind every major Saudi initiative. Just look at its gaming portfolio. The PIF invested $3 billion in Nintendo, $3.3 in Activision Blizzard, $1 billion in Capcom and Nexon, $3 billion in EA, $1.3 in Take-Two, $1.5 in ESL. The list goes on, but then my editor would be animating until forever. And then there's the Savvy Games Group, a subsidiary of the PIF. The Savvy Games Group plans to create 250 gaming companies and 50,000 jobs with a GDP contribution of $13 billion. They've already made a splash by acquiring Scopely, the makers of the hit game Monopoly Go, a game that made over $1 billion in revenue since its launch in April 2023. Savvy CEO Mr. Ward puts it boldly. And the stage for this grand gaming ecosystem? Qiddiya City, the world's first gaming and esports district. With its 500,000 square meters, it'll be home to 25 esports clubs and 30 game companies. And of course, besides the largest fountain, the largest airport, the largest desert, and the largest oil reserve in the world, it'll have the largest esports arena too. You see, MBS, or Mr. Everything, is very serious about this. But with such hefty investments, he's often asked,
What do you say to the people who charge that that's part of sports washing?
Well, if sport washing gonna increase my GDP by 1%, and then I will continue doing sport washing.
You're okay with that term?
I don't care. I have 1% growth of GDP from sport, and I'm aiming for another 1.5%. Call it whatever you want. We're going to get that 1.5%.
An honest response. His focus is obviously on growth, not on critics' perceptions. It's a pretty pragmatic stance, I have to admit. And you know, sports washing, greenwashing, whitewashing, esports washing, you name it, it's a tactic as old as time, known as bread and circuses, to distract from issues with food and entertainment. It's the oldest playbook in the world, and one that we in the West are no strangers to either. Western countries use events for similar purposes. Our forms of washing might be more subtle, but they exist. The main difference between them and us is that Saudi Arabian investments in esports are directly orchestrated by the state, not by some private corporate entity. It's not just funding, it's a state action which can buy silence and complicity over very severe internal issues. Issues around human, women, and migrant workers' rights, death penalties based on social media activities, murder of a journalist, mass starvation in Yemen, infamous anti-corruption purges, and the list goes on. Saudi Arabia's approach to power and control is obvious, and one might wonder how this paves the way for an esports monopoly. We've seen this play out before. Take the PGA versus LIV golf situation. PIF funds LIV, a competitor to the PGA, and lures top golfers away from there with unprecedented cash prizes, ultimately forcing a PGA LIV merger.
How the Saudis are taking over not just a team, but the entire sport.
Or Newcastle United, 80% owned by the PIF. Their third kit started to mirror Saudi national colors, fans started to wear Saudi-inspired headdresses, and the club entered a partnership with Noon.com, a major Amazon rival in Saudi Arabia. All to further blend the club's identity with Saudi interests. Let's take a look at Vice Media. After the journalists' murder, Vice pulled back from Saudi Arabia, but later entered a $1 million deal with them as it was facing bankruptcy. What followed was Vice pulling down a documentary from YouTube that was critical of Saudi Arabia.
He definitely lives this kind of crazy lifestyle where...
Now, what about Saudi's impact in the gaming world? Well, let's look at Embracer Group. After a $2 billion deal with Savvy Games Group inexplicably collapsed, the gigantic video game conglomerate had to dramatically restructure. Embracer had to close studios, cancel projects, cut jobs across the board, including Saints Row studio Volition. In 2020, Riot Games dropped Saudi's Neon project as a sponsor after backlash over LGBTQ rights. But now, it seems Riot's stance is changing. Riot confirmed that it is in talks with Saudi's Esports World Cup to allow 2 teams from each of its leagues to participate. It's pretty clear that the attitude about doing business with Saudi Arabia is changing among esports organizations. Even content creators who would have avoided promoting projects like Esports World Cup, Neom, and Qiddiya are promoting these projects without fear of backlash.
It's like a multi-event or multi-game event, and it's like just the Esports World Cup.
In fact, many prominent names from the gaming world attended the new Global Sport Conference in Riyadh last year. Savvy Games Group, Sony, Sega, Take-Two, Ubisoft, you name it, and others. They all showed up. Saudi money, then, is already changing the gaming industry just as it's changing sports and culture. If taken to an extreme, we could see game content and esports rules starting to align more with Saudi cultural and political views. We could see tournaments favoring Saudi-backed teams and games. We're already seeing signs of this influence. Take the Gamers 8 tournament for CSGO. Team Falcons, a Saudi-owned team, made an appearance despite not usually qualifying for S-tier tournaments.
Everyone's assuming oil money.
I don't like people judging us.
I don't know, bro.
And while the Gamers 8 bread and circus was going on, Saudi border guards were systematically killing hundreds of Ethiopian asylum seekers. And those involved in these killings are the same ones organizing these events. There is much silence around this. But one of the few to comment on this issue was Team Liquid. On X, their post reads that Saudi Arabia's laws do not line up with our values of the esports community. Team Liquid still participated in the Gamers 8 CSGO event, and their CEO produced a 4-minute video explaining why.
We are here today to talk about Team Liquid's participation at the Gamers 8 events in Riyadh.
It is tricky indeed. The responses under the video range from skepticism to calls for boycotts. Reactions that do highlight the struggle to reconcile ethical dilemma and financial interest. But then there are some that are pretty clear on where they stand. In 2022, Moist Esports, founded by gamer Moist Critical, refused an invite to Gamers 8's Rocket League tournament, saying, "I will not be associating with a country that does not recognize LGBTQ+ people and human beings." Another telling example of the geopolitical complexities happened at Gamers 8 when Israeli players Flame Z, Spinks and Nerds required constant security due to the tense relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Spinks tweeted after winning the Gamers 8 prize, thanking the security guys. Now, when such geopolitics affect esport players, you've got to ask, what's the real cost of this involvement? Time will tell. But on the flip side, I can see how these big investments could actually give esports a boost. As they're pumping in cash for prize pools and big events, it might bring in more eyes on esports altogether. It might pull in new fans, it might offer more chances for players all over the world. For the industry's long-term health, this cash injection might be just what's needed, especially when times are tough. And let's not forget legitimacy. Having big players like Saudi Arabia involved could make esports seem more legit, more like traditional sports. But it is a fine line, balancing growth and keeping true to what esports is all about. And players and organizations tend to forget that they are the ones being used. Look at Manchester City and PSG, founded by Abu Dhabi and Qatar. The more they win, the more people forget about what's really happening behind those borders. Does it mean we should all feel bad now when enjoying esports? Of course not. No one wants to kill the joy that esports brings to the world. It's an escape and it unites us. But games and esports aren't just games and esports. They're not and never will be politically neutral, as much as we might wish they were. And that's why we gotta keep talking about it. Keep the conversations going. Enjoy the sport, but also be aware of the bigger issues at play. And while we do that, we've got to look at ourselves too. As we critique Saudi Arabia, we too have to reflect on our own actions and biases. Because in the world of esports, where culture and politics mix, keeping things fair is everyone's job, not just the job of one singular country.